Welcome to the A2 Show with Andrew Cass and Aaron Parkinson, bringing you the trends and topics that affect our lives the most: business, politics, fitness, family, and finance. With over 50 plus years of combined business experience and over $1 billion in revenue generated, your hosts have a unique gift for seeing many steps ahead where others do not. They bring their unfiltered, contrarian views to the show every week to help you win in business and in life.
Aaron, how are you, bud? Number 2 here with the A2 show. Number 2, but number 155, I believe, overall. I've got my hit list today, my man. We've got so much to talk about here today. And, I got some people that reached out and said, whatever happened to the yellow glasses you used to wear when we did Sales Velocity TV? And I said, hey, it's a new era and a new age. These are actually my real lenses if you're watching the show on YouTube. These are the real deals. I don't really have to wear them, but I've gotten used to them a little bit. What do you think? Glasses or no glasses, buddy?
Well, first off, if you need to be able to see, we need to have
No,
glasses.
It's not at that level. Please don't make me older than I am. It's not at that level yet. It's truly for reading.
Yeah, I heard somebody say last week in one of the chats that I was in that 50 is geriatric, and I was like, whoa.
Wait, TJJ.
Whoa.
I turned 50 last year, man, and I'm hanging in there. It was tough psychologically, but I've maintained a pretty good condition for 50, by the way, which I'll talk about my next modality here in a little bit. But how you doing, buddy? Good.
I'm doing amazing. It's you and I were talking about this before the show. It's been a chaotic week, and I think for anybody that's really paying attention, to
which isn't many.
Well, it's less than it probably should be.
It's way less than it should be. I have a feeling.
There are definitely reasons to probably feel chaotic over the last week, and we're gonna cover a few of those, some current events this morning, and then we're gonna basically relay that into the topic that we want to discuss today.
Right.
But before we do that,
yes, sir.
I believe that you wanted to announce your newest acquisition.
Well, since we do talk quite a bit about fitness and wellness and whatnot, I did finally make a long time. You have like these investments you want to make that are normal. Like for some people, it's a car. For some people, it's I don't know, art, wines, whatever. For me, I tend to want to build and collect fitness and recovery type things. And I finally got my cold plunge, Aaron. I posted it on my Instagram page, did a little tour. You should check that out. I did a little evening tour of my cold plunge the other day. I finally got one. I used to cold plunge quite a bit when I was working out at a gym in Miami that had it. It was the first gym in Miami that ever had a cold plunge. And I got into it then. This was 2018, 19. So I got away from it quite a bit. Now I have one on my patio, and I'm just having a blast with it. It's really fun. It has great technology, so I can set the temperature to 55 or back to 65 if my kids want to go in, and I can monitor it. And it's almost like taking care of a little pool. You have to monitor the water and keep it a certain level from a pH standpoint. But overall, from a recovery standpoint, Aaron, 2 minutes in the cold plunge for 50 degrees, 48 degrees, wherever you're at. I'm working my way down right now. You get out of that thing, and you stand on the ground for about a minute. And for us, we live in a great climate, so we're standing in the sun, which is just unbelievable, right? You stand in the 90-degree sun after getting out of a 40 or 50-degree cold plunge, and your body, I can't explain the feeling. There's like this endorphin rush. There is. And you just feel lighter and younger. It's incredible. It's incredible.
My wife goes to cryotherapy 4 times a week.
Similar.
And she does it because of...
I never liked the dry cold, personally.
Yeah, I mean, she likes it, and it's all about how it makes her feel. She knows all about the recovery benefits, the reduction of inflammation,
for sure.
All of these things. But she says the same thing. She just feels better,
like lighter and younger.
Emotionally.
Yes,
when
question.
she does it. So
no question.
I'm envious that I don't have one.
I have to tell you, for a guy of your stature. This guy here lives in the Caribbean in a multi-million-dollar home near the water. And I got to tell you, you're playing awfully small not having a cold plunge at your house, pal. I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. You're sending your wife down the street in the car to get into dry cold when she could go into the backyard by the pool and get into a real cold plunge. I got to tell you, I'm thinking about getting off the show today. I'm disappointed.
I feel like the gauntlet's been laid down to a degree. In the start of this show, I'm feeling like a lesser human.
I sent Aaron a text the other day. I'm like, buddy, you don't have a cold plunge at your house. Are you like, is there something wrong? Are you playing small? Meanwhile, I've had it for an hour as I'm blasting you. Anyways,
I will be looking at cold plunges later, but let's talk about the
Let's
different
talk
things
about
that
some
we
big
saw.
current events on the table before we pivot to our main topic today, which is investment compression. And now investment compression means a couple things. We're seeing investment compression really from our standpoint in business, where we're seeing sales cycles drying up, not good, right? We're seeing retention issues and we're seeing investment compression issues, not only in business, but also in true investments as well. People are clamming up a little bit, and we'll talk about why that's the case here in a little bit. But a couple current events. I want to always start with what's going on and get your take, and you can get my take and whatnot. I've got three. First one is, Aaron, you're in the Caribbean, technically, right? Is Cayman Islands is considered the Caribbean, and I'm in South Florida. Right?
We're just below and west of Cuba, so we're definitely in the Caribbean.
So to my point, so we've got, kid you not, I think you know this, Russian warships now circulating around Cuba and in the Caribbean as of Wednesday. I don't know if you're aware of this. So they're right in our backyard right now.
Yeah,
pretty concerning. You're going to talk about the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and then I'm going to talk about the debates coming up here, big debates coming up, starting the debate cycle here in June. So let's talk about number one. Aaron, you know much about the 1961 Cuban Missile Crisis? I'm sure you do.
I do.
Right? It's one of those things that I think, regardless of where, I ask Aaron because he's from Canada normally. So if you're not from the U.S., you might be like, I heard about it, but didn't really pick it up in school. But that was the closest we've ever come as a country to a nuclear confrontation. And I'm actually watching a documentary I'll recommend right now, which is phenomenal. It's called Turning Point, and it's actually the history of the atomic bomb and the Cold War. I started watching it about 2 weeks ago, and then this happened, ironically. It wasn't because this happened that I started watching. It was really interesting, right? But interesting because the 1961 Cuban Missile Crisis this is a replay where they were setting up bases on Cuba back then. Now they're on warships. So they were on land then. And now they're in warships, and I don't know if this is showmanship or if they're just sort of flexing their warship muscles.
They're
to
definitely
say,
flexing.
Hey,
they're
United
flexing
States, keep sending $1 billion a month over to the Ukraine, and we're going to show you that we're not going to tolerate, what really is what it is. It's posturing. And the reason it's happening right now, which is concerning, is because the Biden administration just said last week that for the first time, Ukraine is authorized to use United States weapons inside of Russia. That's a very big problem. That was not the case before. So they were the I don't know if you call it a treaty or a contract or documentation that basically stated that the weapons are for in Ukraine. As soon as they transfer over the border to Russia, United States is now stamped in the war. Not good. So they think that this started transpiring since that green light was given about 2 weeks ago. So very concerning. And one of those ships does have some sort of nuclear capacity. I know it's that there's not nuclear weapons on the ship. At least that's what they say, right? Like they know, right? But there's capacity. So that's concerning. That's topic number one here.
Yep. And definitely when we look at...
Do you see them when you look out your window?
No, they're a little too far for me. But we talk about the volatility and people's emotional state, which you have to remember is that there's no prosperity in times of war. It's a great quote. Yeah. I don't remember whose it was.
I know. It's a really good quote.
There's really only prosperity for those of the people funding the military complex, which is why a lot of this stuff happens, right?
It's a beast of a business model now.
It is. And so what happens is when people are afraid, they clam up, I think is the word that you used, and they don't spend money. And right now, in the last year, unfortunately, because I don't believe this administration has done a very good job of handling it. You have obviously the Russia-Ukraine war. Now you've got Russian warships in the Caribbean. You had, Palestine firing a gazillion missiles over at Israel. Then you had Iran getting involved there. Like this is a lot of.
There's even a little China-Taiwan tension now.
Yeah, probably not as much on everybody's radar. These other things are definitely on people more on their radar.
Right.
And people are concerned. They're saying like it feels like we're one bad day away from something pretty cataclysmic.
It feels like we're like a next morning away of being not shocked if there's some sort of altercation that hits our shores, right?
Absolutely.
And you throw on top of that the fact that the border is not is that the border is open. Like literally, it's not closed. And they're fighting tooth and nail to not close it. And they just keep blaming everybody but the fact that they basically passed something like 24 executive orders that undid border security 3-4 years ago. Different topic for a different day, but you add that to the mix. I mean, just wartime alone, what we're seeing with the tensions around the world. If I'm president, that's reason enough for me alone to secure every aspect of my country, because now we're vulnerable. Everybody is. And if you leave us vulnerable, you don't give two shits. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah. And we don't know if it's some type of nefarious orchestrated plan.
Well, at this point, you'd think
it feels like
at this point, it would have to be, because just with war alone, just with tensions alone, just with fentanyl alone, we've got a 400% increase in fentanyl coming over the border. Just with the fact that women and children are being trafficked and gone missing, these things alone, you close it. You don't, like, it's time for, put the politics away. We know you're importing voters. This isn't the time for that. This is a time to come together. It's a time for unity and safety. Not happening.
Yeah. And that's where, you look at the next 6 months, and I think it really plays.
It's actually 5, Aaron. I was looking at the math yesterday. It's 5 now.
Okay, so it's 5 months away.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have this feeling, this general unease, this lack of safety feeling, what does everybody do? Andrew, what do you do when you feel unsafe?
Usually play it a little bit safer, become a little bit aware of the surroundings. And when it comes to money, which is our topic for today, investment compression, right, as it pertains to your business, you sort of procrastinate and push things off a little bit. You want more stability, and that's what you're seeing in your business. So Aaron's seeing everything from the ad spend agency side of things. I'm seeing everything from the software business utility side of things, right? In the SaaS space, you in the agency space. So we see a lot of business owners throughout the day in, day out. We speak to a lot of people all the time across the world, really. And we're starting to see some trends that we haven't seen in a long time. And those are investment compression trends that are concerning. And this is why we loop back to current events and world events quite a bit, is because a lot of it stems from that. People are seeing instability around the world. They're seeing instability at home, and they're saying, that doesn't make me comfortable spending. So it starts to create a trickle-down effect, which is not good.
Yeah, people are in that place mentally of, I need to have more cash.
Yep.
Maybe if they're going that extra level, maybe I need to have a different type of currency. Maybe it's gold, maybe it's silver, maybe it's Bitcoin, whatever.
Sure.
They're looking at their expenses. I've heard a lot of this lately. They're looking at their monthly subscriptions, their wants. They're starting to separate things into wants versus needs. And they're saying, I think I can get rid of this want for right now, and only focus on my needs and just shore up the walls a little bit. And that's not good for business.
No, it's not. And that's the compression we're seeing right here. So that's number one. Number two, you were going to talk about the CPI, which I think is a good segue here. So consumer price index, you broke it down for me. I know how it works quite a bit from being in the investment banking world for a while, but there's a new number that you mentioned to me that just came out this week that I want to have you break down.
Right. And consumer price index, I'm going to specifically focus on inflation, right? Is that we've been trying to curb this runaway inflation for the last couple of years, whether or not the banks and the governments have done the right things or the wrong things. I'm not here to debate that. The goal has been for everybody wants to curb inflation right now. And so the reports came out this week that the CPI is basically flat. And the expectation was that inflation was actually going to still be up even higher this week. And the report came back that it's actually flat. So we could actually start to see it flatten out or even potentially trend back down. And when that data initially came out, you saw a lot of positive sentiment. It was a positive piece of news that people needed. And if you actually were watching the stock market, you actually saw the stock market start to climb. Stock market's always a great reflection of people's emotional state, their confidence levels. And it was immediately trounced by the federal government coming out and saying, hey, remember that we were going to reduce interest rates? That was our plan for this quarter. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're keeping them flat.
At least for now, right?
At least for now.
Yeah,
and we're probably going to keep them flat for the rest of the year. So within the same 24-hour period, you had this positive sentiment offset by this negative sentiment.
Right.
And you're looking at the market right now, which is always a great gauge. You see Tesla's going backwards. They're having a rough time right now.
Going backwards in stock price, you mean?
Yeah, they've
been struggling for a little while with stock price because of competition.
Yeah, but it's more obvious right now. Yes. And when you're looking at the blue chip stocks are in the marketplace, when you start to see blue chip stocks taking a beating, that's something you need to pay attention to because that's part of the sentiment.
Right.
And so when you combine all of a sudden we've got Russian warships. We've got the craziness. Everyone forgets that the stuff in Israel was only like a month and a half ago.
It was October when when Hamas attacked Israel. It was longer.
Was it that far back now?
Yeah, it was October 7th.
Okay, so
so it's been about 6 months.
It's been about 6 months.
But that's a 6 month. But that's a 6 month war.
Yeah, that's a very.
By the way, America they're involved in everything. So I mean, there's push and pull there. Should we be there? Should we not? Should we be giving aid here? Should we not? I mean, that's the friction we're seeing on college campuses.
Absolutely.
We're talking about history. History has a great way of sort of teaching you what may go on in the future, right? So this documentary I'm talking about, it's very Vietnam-like right now. What you're seeing on college campuses is exactly like what we saw in the 60s in Vietnam.
That's
what
very
we're
interesting.
seeing in Cuba right now is exactly what we saw in the 1961 Cuban Missile Crisis. So going back and looking at how all that happened, we'll put this documentary in the show notes. It's really good, Aaron. I mean, for people that like history, I like history. It's called Turning Point, and it's the history of the atomic bomb and the Cold War, as I mentioned before. But man, the similarities, 2024, I'm like, it's eerie.
Well, and if you remember what happened after that space of time, interest rates went through the roof.
They did. That was when we went into a big 22%. I mean, it was like 22% interest rate, 18% interest rates I remember that recession in the 90s because remember my dad was struggling then because he was transitioning from one business to the next, and he would tell me later in life that the recession was really hard on them, and that was I want to say that was probably 70s, 80s-ish.
Well, I know it was in the 80s because Liz's dad, who owned multiple pharmacies and a mall and was a very astute businessman.
Yep.
Her mom often reflects, because he's passed away now, that he was on edge almost through the entire 80s where their mortgage rate was 23%.
Oh, yes, exactly.
And he was getting calls from the bank regularly saying, you need to put $100,000 in the bank right now, or we're going to foreclose on, we're going to foreclose on your house, or we're going to do this or that. So they were reaching out above and beyond the contracted payment saying, we need you to put this in, we need you to put this in. And she said she really believes that it's part of why he had a heart attack.
Wow.
And passed away, is that stress level was so high. And so obviously that era was more of an extreme than the era that we're in right now, but there's definitely elements of it right now that are here. And the question is it going to creep up and get worse? Everybody's obviously hoping not, but that impacts people's buying decisions. It impacts their spending.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And from a business standpoint, with mostly business people watching the show and us coming from Sales Velocity TV, where sales and marketing were our focal point at all times, we have to be, as business owners, we have to look at the sales cycles no different than an investment advisor looks at investment cycles. What investments are best for the times we're in right now? For us, what are the sales offers in the marketing campaigns that are best for the times we're in right now? Same kind of conversation, right? It's a conversation of adjusting to the times, adjusting your business, adjusting your financial planning, adjusting your health and fitness, so to speak, right, to the times that we're in right now. So that's what we're seeing, a lot of that right now. So yeah, warships in the Caribbean, CPI. Last current event point I'll make is big one here that we come back to a lot is, since we're in this election cycle, which by the way is 5 months out, is we've got our first debate on June 27th, Aaron. It's the most informal of the debates because it's the first time I've ever seen a debate happen before anybody's on the ballot, which is interesting.
That seems odd.
It does seem, I think it's because of the pressure of people wanting to see listen, at the end of the day, I think Biden and Trump are too old to be doing this. I mean, Biden is a step away from the nursing home. No, everybody knows this. Trump is in pretty good condition. He's out there campaigning, doing his thing, but he's 79 years old.
True.
I mean, I'm in the camp that thinks that post 75 you're disqualified, but that's neither here nor there right now.
I would agree with that.
I think what America wants to see, right? I think it's more so for Biden. They want to see what is the aptitude of these guys before we officially put them on the ballots. But here's the outlier, Aaron. Here's the outlier. The outlier is we've got a third guy in the race who you and I talk about quite a bit, and he's met all the polling criteria to be on that stage. You need a 15%. You need 15% polling criteria to be on the stage, and you need it across multiple polls. And RFK is between 15, 17, 18, even 21% in some polls. CNN is holding the debate. CNN has said at this point, you're not allowed on the stage. In the United States of America, you've met all the polling criteria. Technically, he's also met the signatory criteria, which means you have to have signatures in certain states. He's actually on more ballots right now than Biden and Trump. They can't get on the ballot until they are formally elected onto the ballot at their respective conventions. One is in July and one is August. So actually, Kennedy is on more ballots at this time.
He has
and
more
has
right
met
to
the
be there
polling
than they do.
criteria to be on the ballot. And the Biden administration is on record saying 2 weeks ago that if Kennedy is on the stage, we won't come to the debates.
What does that
Aaron,
say?
where do we live? What happened here? We've got a third party. This is our choice, not theirs, right? This is unprecedented. You've got a guy who meets the criteria, and the current administration says if he's there, we're not going. As they just finished convicting the other guy for some business falsification records from 10 years ago with no victims. It's like, so talking about this Turning Point documentary, a lot of it started off with Stalin, Russia, communism. I don't see any difference than what's happening right now with the way they're playing the election in the debate game. That's scary. And that has people really, really concerned. People who are paying attention. Most people, like, they hear me and they go, you mean that's happening in America? I had no idea. Well, that's just happened. And that if you really understand that, so now you're starting to basically pull the rights of the people, and you're actually, the most precious thing in a democracy is elections and debates. Right. And if you start messing with the election and the debate process, you start breaking democracy. And that is exactly what is happening right now. That's very scary for this investment compression cycle.
Agreed. And I think that if you and I are pretty, I don't know if we'd use the term libertarian, but we're definitely
probably independent, conservative, libertarian. We sort of blend in that area. We're probably the furthest thing from liberals, I would say. But actually, there's probably some liberal elements of us. We're pro-choice guys.
I definitely have some strong liberal elements.
Pro-environment guys, and we want to see a clean earth, and we want to see less crony capitalism, and we want to see less corporate capture. So we're probably a good blend of all. Yep. The problem is, and I'll let you finish that in a second. The problem is today's liberal party or Democrat party is the furthest thing from liberal. They're full-blown socialism, even soft communism at this point. So you can't compare it because it's not what it was. It's not the Kennedy party. It isn't the Clinton party. And there's not even remnants of it.
Well, and what I was going to say about that is that, if we can't force the issue of, for example, getting Kennedy into the debate, then what's your next option? Well, look at who you might have been thinking about voting for. And if they're not willing to come and debate with somebody who's earned the right to be there, ask yourself, is this really somebody I should be voting for?
This is the point, Aaron. Logically speaking, you're absolutely right. What you just said is, yes, to me, the credibility of that administration, our current administration, the White House, is completely gone. They lost a lawsuit for censorship. They refused Secret Service protection for the first time in history to Robert Kennedy. They said he can't be on the stage or we're not going. I mean, none of this is democracy as they claim to be champions of democracy. They have literally unwound every single democratic process that exists as values in America just in the last year or two.
But you got to ask the question why, because what it sounds like to me is just fear.
It, of course, is fear. It's agenda.
Right.
This is why else would you open the border as you have unequivocal evidence of human trafficking, of children disappearing, of drug use, of cartels, of people on the FBI watch list. I mean, there is a laundry list of reasons as to why you would not want to secure the American border. And because they're importing voters. They are so scared, to your point, fear of losing full control and never, ever being remembered for anything ever again. I mean, their policies are so bad and so America last that the fear is driving this spiteful agenda of doing the opposite of what makes sense and doing the opposite of what is a democracy, that I think they're just going all in at this point, which makes me really nervous about the next 5 months. So as we move to this investment compression thing, if you really understand just what we talked about here briefly, there are some really, really bad policies that are in place right now that are so anti-American that if you understand what they are, you don't want to invest in America as enthusiastically as you did maybe in years past. And that's the topic of today really, is this investment compression thing. Confidence is lost in a lot of areas. And a lot of what we just talked about here with war and just unwinding the election process and censorship and open borders, and we could go on and on and on. And you're like, well, that's not really the topic of the show. Well, it's because of those things that we're seeing investment compression and people not wanting to do what they would normally love to do in business. Because at the end of the day, for us, it comes back to business. And here's what we're seeing. People are saying, not now. Hopefully there's better leadership in 5 months, and then I'll feel confident doing what I thought I might want to do. Because this, at the end of the day, is a leadership thing, and we don't have it right now.
And that's an important note, to have here, because I know that and I think if we've been an avid watcher or an avid listener for a long time, we are very much personal responsibility people. We are people that believe that we create our own future, we create our own environment. So I don't want you to get the picture that we feel like, everything's out of control, there's nothing you can do. Absolutely not. Two things that are really important right now. Number one, it doesn't matter who wins in 5 months. It doesn't matter in my opinion, doesn't matter if it's the Republican Party. It doesn't matter if it's the Democrat Party. It doesn't matter if it's an independent in RFK. Whoever wins, there'll be a big exhale and there'll be a renewed sense of optimism because we've got, whoever it is, and it's a brand new 4 years, and at least we know who it's going to be. And you're going to see, in my opinion, a big surge forward in optimism, in investment, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens between now and then is really, really important, because in business, 5 months it could be 5 years. So how do you protect yourself and thrive over the next 5 months? And that's a couple of topics that we want to talk about right now. So
before you do, I'm going to push back a little bit here. So
Sure.
Normally in years past, I would say to you, absolutely right. It's more important what goes on in your house than the White House. That's a saying that I've known for a long time that has always been tried and true. We are in a stage right now in the last 2 to 3 years where we've entered, and I just touched on two topics briefly. We have entered an area that we've never, ever, ever seen in American history. If anybody wants to debate me on it, you've got a front row pass on my show. We have never seen an administration censor its citizens and threaten Section 230 protection to social media companies to block information from hitting the waves. We've never seen that before. Kennedy sued the Biden administration in Supreme Court and won on that. That was a full-on censorship campaign. We've never seen an administration deny Secret Service protection to a candidate who's met the criteria. We've never seen an administration open the border, and we've never seen an administration who has no intention in peace talks to anybody at war around the world, just keep funding the wars. We are dead as an American if this administration is anywhere near the White House in November of 2024. Like, there will be people leaving to go join you in the Cayman Islands. It's that bad. Now, in years past, we've never seen this kind of damage, this type of collateral damage before. The last election, Biden, Trump, no big deal. Clinton, who cares? Hillary, the other one, right? Obama, back in the day, who was he going against? Mitt Romney or whoever it was.
Yep.
Back then, I agree with everything you're saying. But we've entered an arena. We've never gone so far down the path of socialism / soft communism than we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. And we just laid out 4 or 5 examples right here that they're not even our opinion. They've broke the election process. They've broke the debate process. They've broke the border process. They've broke peace talks, and don't even get me involved in their social issues. It's insane. So we are at an area now where there are people who are getting ready to leave the country like you did if this administration repeats itself. And business-wise, Aaron, you just look at the mass exodus from California and New York, who, by the way, are mini examples of the White House. We've never seen more people leave California and New York to come to states like Texas, Nevada, and Florida than just we've seen. I live in Florida. I see the numbers. People are coming in here in droves. We run a really tight ship here. We don't put up with any of the bullshit, and we're hyper aware of everything we're talking about right now. We're playing defense in Florida. People think we're playing offense. We're playing defense. We're stopping all this crap, not starting all this crap, right? So it's as an American at 50 years old who is an observer of history, a college graduate, been through the school system, right? Been in the business world for 20 years, have had American companies. You know my background. I've never seen any of this. Never, ever. There's no similarities to anything in the past. That's what scares people who are paying attention.
I would agree with that. And the solution to that is pay attention and vote.
Well, yeah, for sure. And then, of course, insulating yourself from, what if. But I think for now, what we need to pivot to is investment compression, topic of the day, because now you're in a 5-month cycle here, right? Yep. I think one of the points you make, which is important, Aaron, is the fact that, yes, just knowing what the outcome is will create at least Okay, now we've at least got the tension past us.
Right.
Right. So there's a little bit of that, but the problem is, if, to my point earlier, we won't make 4 years of the current mode, right? So
Yeah,
what do you do for these next 5 months? Is the key,
and the point
right?
I was making there is that it doesn't. When I was saying it doesn't really matter, I wasn't saying it doesn't matter who wins. I have a very different opinion on that. I'm saying it doesn't matter who wins. Whoever wins, there will be some level of renewed optimism because the tension will be
right.
passed.
Relief, move on. We're past the election drama, right?
Correct.
Less distraction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then depending on who wins, I think you'll see different levels of optimism that come out of that. And so right now, what I'm seeing, with our clients, what I'm seeing with investors, I'm investing in other businesses as well, is there's definitely been a shift over the last really 6 to 12 months, but it seems to be getting more prominent over the last 2 months.
I agree.
That buyers, consumers, and mostly what we're talking about is B2C, business to consumer, is that the consumer is willing to buy, because you got to remember, money doesn't go anywhere. I mean, if you remember in COVID, there was a gazillion dollars that were printed and just thrown into the system. There's money that's there, but right now, people are less likely to hand it over using the processes that you were using a year ago. So you may have some type of sales process that you have in place that historically has converted at XYZ level. And what we're seeing across the board is that those people trying to implement that same strategy are seeing fairly significant reductions in their conversion rates because they're not adjusting to the current sentiment in the economy, which is, I'm a little scared, I'm a little nervous, I need more trust and more credibility built into this process before I'm willing to fork over that money. I still will buy, but I need a little more.
But I need more of a push. I need more of the nudge, right?
And you used the term earlier, how do we make it stick? In order to make it stick, you need more. And I'll give you an example from myself. There's a very, very world-renowned 20-year best-selling real estate author. I won't say his name on the show right now, but he's coming on as a client in my agency this week. Last year, I would have had a call with his marketing manager. We maybe would have had a second call if we thought we were the right fit. Deal's done, outgo the contracts, start with the onboarding. Over the last 2 weeks, I had to have 3 calls with his team, and then a 4th call picking apart every single element of the proposal and the contract with 24 adjustments made, including a dramatic reduction in the commitment of time that he was held to that contract so that he could have an out.
And the only reason that's happening is because he's feeling all the things you just mentioned.
Correct. And it doesn't mean he's not going to buy. It just means that he's not going to buy in the 1-call close or the 2-call close that would have been typical last year. When we look at our clients right now, if they've got a premium product, and when I say premium product, I'm really talking at something $3,000 or higher. So our clients often have some type of product or service, if they're a retainer-based service company, that their lifetime value or their immediate cost is anywhere between $3,000 and $50,000. What we're seeing in those processes right now is that if you try to just go from information to sales call, the show rates are way down. And the close rates are way down. But we do have examples of clients that have put things in place over the last 2 months where they've actually intentionally slowed the sales process. And I'll give you an example of this, where historically they might have had some type of ad and then some type of presentation, and then they'd had maybe a setter reach out to that person and then book them on a calendar with somebody in the sales team. They've actually had the setter become the gatekeeper instead of the force to the sales team, and they've stopped and said, let me assess this customer's level of awareness and let me assess this customer's intent to buy at this point. And regardless of whether we think they would buy or not right now. Let's force them through another piece of information. So maybe we'll give them a book from the owner to read first. You're a big proponent of books, right?
Tangible.
Maybe we'll say we need you to watch 3 of their podcast episodes first. Maybe we'll put them on a demo or a master class for 3 hours first. Even if the person says that they're interested, it's about slowing down that process, and then they'll meet with them after. They'll reassess their level of awareness and intention at that point. And if they feel they've reached a certain level of threshold at that point, then they'll move them to the sales team. And so this forced consumption, this forced increase in belief and credibility versus just trying to go from here to here to here is dramatically increasing all of their KPIs across the board. So if you're in any space that sells a premium product right now, look at your process from 12 months ago and look at your process now and ask yourself, where can I insert more consumption, more credibility, more outcome-based proof into the equation and slow it down, or even maybe interject a spot in between? Because if you don't, you're going to see this challenge on the back end of your conversions, because I can see it across the board for those people who haven't put this stuff in place. The money's still there. They just don't trust you enough yet. And a great example of this, Andrew, you asked me to mention this, is that how I know the money's still there and people will still buy is you've still got colleges and universities doing record revenue and record profit, because people will still go beg, borrow, and steal to pay for a university education,
Really will,
even though that university education is far diminished in its outcome for that degree holder at this juncture. It's because they're established organizations. There's been established marketing for 50 years. They are perceived as credible and up on this pedestal. So people will go take loans and borrow from family and save money to go to these institutions. They have the established credibility. You do not. So you have to find ways to manufacture more of that credibility in your process before you go for the sale, or they're going to stop. They're going to say, I'm going to think about it. They're going to get buyer's remorse. They're going to get distracted by other things, and you're going to lose your sale. That's just a fact of combating this current environment.
Keyword combating. I think you just nailed it. Keyword combating. And the downside of all this is it's going to require more work. It's going to require more steps. I'll give you a couple examples of some of the things we're doing, Aaron. Also, to your point, great points about adding new dimensions to the sales process to, again, great word, combat this investment compression syndrome. I think that's what we'll call the show today, investment compression syndrome. How do you overcome it, right? So here's one thing we do. You know that we've done a show actually on this book here.
Yep.
The Ultimate Sales Machine, one of my all-time favorite sales books aside of my own called Sales Velocity, but this one is really good. Really good because it drills down on the tactical side of how to acquire the right customer, the right niche, whatnot, right? So what we're doing now is we send this book out, physical form, Aaron, as a gift to our clients who become certified partners, who do our lead gen AI service, because we don't just want to get them on the service and say, hey, have at it. We want to educate them on how to maximize the service with strategies that are real world boots on the ground strategies, to your point there. So there's these little elements that we put in place so that somebody goes, okay, they didn't just want to get me in here. They want to get me in here and they want to help me be successful, which means I'll probably invest in more things. I'll have more trust in them to do more, to go to the events, to upgrade into something else, right? So you know me, I'm always trying to add that physical component of putting something in someone's hands, because everything's digital today. So as soon as you show up physical today, you're automatically in a new hemisphere, right? We're not even in a physical society anymore. It's almost like the world's fake. Everybody's on social media. Nothing's real. So as much real as I can get back in the mix, right, the better, because immediately you elevate yourself. You can put a letter on someone's desk, a FedEx package, right? If you have 50 dream clients you want to go after and you put 50 FedEx packages on their desk with your offer next week, I mean, and then you follow up on those FedEx packages, you're not cold calling anymore. You're warm calling now. You're calling to see if they got the package in the book in that example. So all of these things matter more today than ever. The downside also is they cost more money and they take more time.
And you have to invest in those things right now in order to be able to, like we said, to combat it. And I love the book idea that you talked about right there, because there's a real world example of, I can validate that this works, because when somebody goes through a book, there's an indoctrination process with them and the author and the concept that it's covering. And I don't remember if you were with me at the event we went to San Diego. It was probably 15 years ago, where we met Jordan Belfort.
Belfort's event. Yeah, we went. Yeah.
And before we got to the event, we just got his book, The Wolf of Wall Street, in the mail.
We did. That was Kern's event, by the way.
Correct.
So Frank Kern did the event, had Belfort as the guest, and he sent us the book prior to the event. And it was, we did this. We're talking about it to this day. Remember the book they sent us before the event? That was, Aaron, that was like 2007 or 8.
Yeah, I feel like it was a long time ago.
Yes.
And we didn't even know that Jordan was going to be a featured speaker at that event. We just got the book in the mail, and all it said was, make sure you read this book before you get to the event. Much like I'm talking about right now, make sure you consume this piece of information before we're going to take the next step.
Right.
And I read it. I thought it was hilarious. Obviously,
it was
the
pure
movie.
Entertainment. That was a novel.
Yeah, and the movie was still years from coming out yet.
Oh, yeah.
But the book was, I couldn't even put it down. It was so ridiculous.
Amazing.
And we got to the event, and then all of a sudden, Jordan Belfort came on stage, and then Jordan Belfort launched his sales training program, a 6-month sales training program from stage at that event. And the conversion rates were off the charts. Why? Because I didn't show up to an event, see a guy, have him tell me a story about himself for 20 minutes, and then pitch me on a program. I'd literally spent 12 hours with that guy inside of his book before I met him. And then when I met him, I had him up on a different pedestal. And then when he offered me the ability to work with him and learn his sales training process, I could reflect back on all the things he was able to accomplish with that sales training process that I learned from the book. And it was a lay down sale at that point.
And this is 2007, 2008, where you could get away with a lot less media. And you
of
certainly
course.
could have easily got away with not doing physical back then. But today, I think you need to have a physical component.
Well, and it's just what I was saying is that you have to figure out a way right now to get more forced consumption and more credibility in your steps and in your processes if you want to be able to combat this sense of uneasiness that is in this current economy, because they will buy. They just won't buy as easily as they did when they were sitting at home in front of their computers, locked down from COVID with money falling from the sky.
Yep.
That time is over. And we've got 5 months before we know how much that's going to be unblocked. And the great thing is that when there's challenges in the business world, and Andrew, I'm sure you could give me a couple of examples. When you look back at the 2008s, when you look back at the 80s, when you look back at all of these different times, the businesses that started to think outside the box on how to improve their product, how to improve their customer journey, how to improve their marketing and sales conversion process, how to be more efficient in their fulfillment, because those times were challenging. Those businesses, when they came out the other side, many of them became massive success stories.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm trying to think of the businesses that were really.
I think the biggest, best example that we keep coming back to, which is probably an extreme example, is always for me, it's Apple. Right. So back in 2000, 2001, where we arguably had the biggest NASDAQ tech crash in history, where the NASDAQ went to 5,000 and then it was at 2,000 in like 6 months.
Yep.
Right. During that time, that was a major example of investment compression, because tech was just, it was going down by 20% a day. I was in the investment banking business. It was brutal at that point. Right. So at that point in time, all these tech companies are either going out of business, or they're laying off half their staff, or they're going out and getting funding. And what is Apple doing? They're opening up physical brick and mortar Apple stores. Think about that for a minute. I always come back to this story because it's one of those stories that has stayed with me forever, is who's opening brick and mortar stores across the country where people can go in, engage, go to the Genius Bar, go to trainings, do all the things you're talking about, Aaron, right? Learn about things. Nobody's trying to hard sell. They're just giving you an environment where you can learn, consume, and engage with their staff, and everybody's dressed the same way, and there's a culture and a theme, and that creates a really great buying environment. But in tech, it does something else. It gives people a chance to go, hey, something's not working with my phone. Can you look at this for me? Hey, I want to learn about this new iMac. Can you show this to me? And they created a real show and tell demo environment to sell more, obviously, but they've also created that support environment where people can learn more, to your point about consumption. While everybody else is either looking for funding, consolidating, going out of business, they're making massive investments in that. And now that store, pound for pound today, as we know, per square footage across the world, there is not a more profitable per square footage retail store, I think, in existence. I think this is the number one per square footage storefront property that there is. I don't know if even Gucci or any of these big brand names, these shoe brands or leather brands, I don't even think they have more profit per square footage than Apple does, to be honest. I don't know if that's still the case, but it was for a while.
And I don't know, maybe but another business that launched was Starbucks. And I believe it launched in a time of fairly uncertain economic levels. And they came out and they basically said, if you remember, I mean, when Starbucks came up, people were like, oh my God, it's so expensive, right? The coffee is a premium. It's this amazing product, but it's a premium price product. And rather than just come out and say, hey, we're the best coffee, we get it from this source, we've got all these different options that you can add to it, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Their whole marketing stance was based around customer journey. And that's the other thing that you can look at right now is customer journey. Is when people are unsure about making decisions, the best thing you can do is look at your customer base and segment them out into what are their pain points that align with their current situation and their budget, and create opportunities for those people in those different segments that appeal to them. And it might mean more product creation. It might mean more operations. It might mean all these things. It probably does. But if somebody can't make a leap to your flagship product, but they can get a taste of what it's like to work with your organization, what it's like to work with your team, what your product actually looks, tastes, feels like, and then you've got their information and you've got something planned out for the next stage of their customer journey, it's way easier to sell somebody that's already a fan than it is to acquire a new one. But maybe you don't have something custom tailored to where they're at now with a price point that makes sense for them where they're at now. And you're just saying, I only take these people over here. Well, if these people over here have now become a smaller percentage and they're harder to sell, maybe it starts becoming time to look at these other people and how you can serve a wider range of people with a very focused customer journey. And going back to Starbucks, their whole marketing platform is we want to be everybody's third place, right? People have home, people have work. We want to be everybody's third place. If you remember Starbucks, if you remember coffee shops before Starbucks, they were like diners. They were like diners and delis. Like coffee wasn't even really their focus. They were just
it wasn't the only thing. It was always
it wasn't the only thing. It was more like an add-on to whatever the core business was doing.
Right.
Starbucks came in and said, we're going to make coffee the thing. But when you walk into our store, you're going to see lounges, you're going to see couches, you're going to see nice finishings, you're going to have nice music, everything's going to smell good. Our baristas are going to look professional. We want you to come and sit here and feel good. We want to manage that customer journey at the highest level, because if you want to sit here for 4.5 hours and get 3 refills, no problem. Because you know what? At some point you'll probably get hungry, and we've got some bagels and we've got some banana bread, and eventually we've got some egg bites and whatever. They wanted to become everyone's third place.
And they did.
And they did. And they did phenomenally well because they understood creating a new customer experience and new customer journey, which you may have to do. And the great thing is that if you do that right now, out of necessity, when we get past this point, which we always do, you'll have a new thing in place for prosperity. One thing that's done out of necessity often becomes a new level of prosperity when the doors open back up, because it's ready to go and it's vetted and it's tested when the floodgates of optimism and confidence come back.
Yeah, and they ultimately will, right? There will be
They always
cycles
do.
like that. But yeah, this is a really good time to be looking at shoring up your processes because really you have to, right? If you're going to do things the same way you did them to your point for the last 6 to 12 months for the next 6 to 12 months, that could be problematic, right? There's even predictions out there that there might not be an interest rate cut to your point earlier. I don't see any evidence of one personally. There's no inflation numbers that would, to me, tell me there would be an interest rate cut anytime soon. You know what's going to happen if that happens? You're going to have even less confidence in this environment because there's so many people banking on this interest rate cut thing, which to me is insane. I mean, I'm like, this is all they talk about is everybody's waiting around for an interest rate cut. I mean, well, what is that going to do for you, right? A quarter point here, a quarter point there, big deal, right? But it's a sentiment thing. It's a confidence thing, and that's really what and they're going to be very disappointed because there's no inflation numbers to dictate that's going to be the case. But you're absolutely right, Aaron. Doing more with less. How do you combat investment compression? Really, you've got to make yourself more visible. I think two things I can say to your points here would be, okay, now's a time where you might have to do more webinars, more demonstrations, more trainings, more just showing off what it is that you do and having fireside chats and going live more and having a podcast like this where you talk about your philosophies and you bring on guests. And these are all the things that you should be doing them all the time. But I feel like when there's longer sales cycles and there's investment compression, you're naturally going to have to do more content. And that's going to build more trust and it's going to allow you to build more assets. You might want to write the book that you've always wanted to write because being a published author gives you a reason to go on podcasts and gives you a reason to go on stage and gives you a reason to do webinars. This is a great time to be doing that, especially if you're inside of a slow period where you have more time, right? You might not have more money. Some of you might not have more money. Many do. You might have more time. So what you make up for with time or what you make up for with money, you do with time, right? Some people are time broke and money broke, right? So what you lack in money, you make up for with time. What you lack in time, you often make up for with money, right? So this is a time where you want to maybe be putting some assets in place. You and I are doing a book project this year, right? Putting assets in place that will serve you in the years ahead.
Agreed. And I think if you stay as optimistic as possible, you focus on the areas that you need to shore up, and you put in place the things that you probably have been putting off because things were relatively easy a year ago, then when you get to the other side of the fear-based sentiment to the optimistic sentiment, you're just going to be in a much stronger place to scale up and be successful anyway. So it's a need for now, it's a luxury and a benefit for later.
Yeah, and we were talking about staff-oriented things earlier here today too. You have to really look at your team and your staff now as well, right? I mean, this is obviously a time where you say, do I have my A players? Do I have too many C players and A roles? Do I have, right? I mean, looking at staff, looking at costs, right? This is a time to be auditing and analyzing, and you're doing it now in your business. I'm doing it in mine. It's just the nature of the cycles, right?
It's part of being a business owner. If it was easy all the time, everybody would be in it. There's a reason why very few people are successful at the 5-year mark, the 10-year mark, the 20-year mark, because it's hard. You have to analyze, you have to look at industry shifts, you have to be proactive, you have to be lucky. There's a lot of elements that have to come into play. You can't just sit there and expect that everything's going to work and everything's going to grow in this perfectly straight line, because if you look at any business, right? If you look at any business and you actually zone in close versus just stepping back and looking at the growth, you'll see that it goes zip, burp, zip, burp, zip, zip,
yeah,
burp,
stair step incline, not a straight, right? Hockey
absolutely
puck increase is common,
Yep.
right? Question is, how do you handle it, right? I think psychology wise, right? How do you handle it? We keep looping back to your the way you take care of yourself will determine how resilient you are with the downturns that we're seeing a lot. We're talking about downturns today in investment compression because there's a lot of businesses that are seeing just that. They're seeing investment compression and they're seeing that downturn. So if you're taking really good care of yourself, self-care, and you're staying in shape, eating well, resting well, then you'll be more resilient to deal with what's inevitably going to come. And really, again, it's what we're seeing now with the circles that we're in. As we're seeing people talking about retention issues, we're seeing customer loss issues, we're seeing longer sales cycles, we're seeing this investment compression. That really frustrates the hell out of me, and I'm sure it does you as well. But
Yep.
I know that I'm resilient to it to some degree because I'm making sure I'm taking care of myself physically, mentally, nutritionally, right? If you let yourself go while your business may be going, you're going to be in a downward compounding spiral, which could get really scary, right? Because you don't want your health to go with it. And that is happening to a lot of people, is they'll let their health go if their business might be going through a tough cycle, right? I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to eat well. I just need to work, and fix, and work. And then all of a sudden you need to fix you and the business at the same time. And that is now because you're fixing you have less time to fix the business, right? So now you're running into that game of playing, how am I going to fix myself and how am I going to fix the business? And ideally what you want to be doing is just staying hyper focused on fixing the business and making the business better and creating all these better processes. But you're going to need energy, and you're going to need sound mind and sound body to pull that off, because really anybody can function when times are great, but it's the true champion that can function when times are not so great.
And I think I'll end it with this. Somebody said to me, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, the number one key in business is just to survive, right? He who survives the longest wins, or she who survives the longest wins, right? The longer you can keep yourself in the game, the higher chance of you being massively successful. So if you're taking care of yourself physically, if you're taking care of yourself mentally, if you're paying attention to trends and you're making pivots where you have to, and nobody else is, let's say all of your competitors aren't, and
Which
you
is
come out
probably
the
the
other
case.
side.
Most people are very disconnected today at the trends we talk about on the show, these 5 core categories. People are really disconnected today, I feel like, which is a big reason why we're doing what we're doing. Is it's a passion of mine, I know it is yours too, to really just point to things and educate and highlight and speak out and just to get improvement in these areas. At the end of the day, we want improvement and we want autonomy in these areas.
Yep, absolutely.
100%. So a lot going on here. We covered some current events. We covered this investment compression cycle, which I'm sure we're going to visit and come back to quite a bit. We will see you next time, same place. I'm Andrew. That's Aaron. This one's a wrap. Over and out.